Paul, Senator Paul, as always, good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So President Trump has a disagreement with you, or you with him. He says you're always voting no. You deny that. I know you endorse Mr. Trump, even though it was after the election. But are you always voting no? Are you Dr. No?
Well, I do recall voting no on 2 of his impeachments, and I think he was okay with those no's.
Yes.
I do recall voting yes on his cabinet. I do recall guiding through Kristi Noem through my committee to be appointed in very quick fashion. So I think I've been quite supportive of the president, but I think in some ways we're talking past each other. So for example, I support the tax cuts. I don't think the CBO is right. I think and agree with Art Laffer that you can reduce rates and get more revenue. I think that's what happened in 2017. I think the tax cuts have largely paid for themselves. I think renewing tax cuts that already exist, it's ridiculous to say that somehow that is going to cause a new deficit when they're just simply keeping the same policy. The disagreement I have is not over that. I don't agree with the CBO at all on all that nonsense on the taxes. I think spending cuts could be more, but even that, I'm willing to take an imperfect bill that doesn't cut spending. What bothers me and what indicates that the deficits will roll on no matter what your fancy calculations have done for us, Larry, they want to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion. This year, it will be $2.2 trillion, and that was voted on by mostly Republicans, not this Republican, but most Republicans in March voted to continue the Biden spending levels. So when we get to the end of the year, $2.2 trillion, but they want to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion. So they're anticipating at least that much or more. I hope you're right. I hope the deficits go down. But why are they wanting to borrow $5 trillion if they really believe the deficit is going to go down?
Well, Senator, you know, I love the quote. This came from James Lankford last night, your colleague, and a very smart fellow from the Finance Committee. He said, look, you can't pay down the jumbo mortgage in 1 year. Or, frankly, you can't even pay it down in several years. So
that's not what I'm advocating for. What I'm advocating for is this. If you had teenage children and you gave them a credit card and they maxed out the $2,000 on booze and gambling, would you give them a bigger credit line or a smaller credit line? Congress is worse than a bunch of drunken teenagers. They have a history of not being fiscally responsible. You should give them a very short debt ceiling increase and say, show me and prove to me that you will act responsibly, and I'll give you a little bit more money. So the credit line should be restricted, it should be short, and we should vote 3 or 4 times a year on the debt ceiling. If you put it on the back burner for 2 years, they will spend it, spend it, spend it, because most is not being addressed. Most of the entitlements are not even part of this debate. But I will vote for the bill, imperfect as it is, but I'm not going to vote to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion, because then there's nobody left in town who has their hands clean and can speak from a high moral ground that debt is wrong and we shouldn't keep piling it on.
Well, listen, I'm sure that issue can be worked out. I don't see that as a really big obstacle. You and I, look, these debt ceiling things are symbolic because the Congress is going to do what the Congress is going to do. And lately, it spends a whole lot too much. And we agree on that. And so that needs to be tackled. By the way, the mandatory savings of $1.7 trillion, I believe Russell Vogt put out, no, that's the biggest one we've ever had. That's the biggest savings we've ever had. And I think that but the tax cuts are going to produce a big growth
But you also have
dividend.
to put it in perspective, and this is part of why Elon is upset. Elon found about $200 billion worth of savings in waste and fraud. This bill is going to spend $300 billion in the first 2 years. So even if you did, listen, $300 billion new on military and $300 on military and border. The savings, if it was $1.5 trillion, is $150 billion a year. So in the first year or two, you will barely being offset the new spending. This bill is really a vehicle for Lindsey Graham to secretly explode beyond on the military budget. They want to explode the military budget beyond the caps. That's really what this bill is about. So there is a lot of new spending in this bill. If the new spending weren't in there, it truly would be a bill that would be saving money.
Look, I will let you'll argue with Lindsey on that point. I mean, we could talk about another segment. But, you know, reconciliation bills are limited. to mandatory programs and tax programs.
That's true.
You're dealing with the appropriation side. It's a fair debate, Senator. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't enter into this, and I think some folks may not understand that. But be that as it may, look, with Elon, I don't know what all his motives are. I think he's a brilliant man, probably the smartest guy in the world. I think he's been a big help in pounding down spending. They're going to come back. Again, as Langford said last night, there'll be many bites of the apple for rescissions and quite possibly, Senator Rand, appropriation reductions. Those are all possibilities.
We will see. Have you met the people on the Appropriations Committee in Washington, Larry?
Well,
look,
I'm all for the
$9 billion rescission, but it's a rounding error. And I tell the American people, if your congressman or woman does not vote for a $9 billion rescission, come to Washington, flood the streets, and go out and vote and get new people to represent you. Because $9 billion is a pittance,
yes,
and it's the terrible spending.
But
it's the waste that Elon pointed out.
It's just the
we
first
need to
step.
Start there.
But look at
it's the first step, but we've got to do 10 times more, 100 times more.
I'm good with 10. I'm good with 100. Listen, my relationship down through the years is better with the tax cutters than the appropriators. I'll just say that. But I like to be friendly with everybody. We're all friendly people. Now, Senator Rand Paul, one other point. You were one of the co-sponsors of the REINS Act to stop all the over-regulation, which under Biden may have increased by, God knows, $2 trillion. Now, Senator Thune wants to put I didn't know the REINS Act wasn't in the House bill, and I think that's a terrible oversight. Senator Thune is saying he wants to put the reins back, the bill, back into this one big beautiful bill. As I say, this was your baby. You're not going to vote against your own bill if you put it back in there, will you?
I'm all for putting the REINS Act in. There's a big question whether or not the Senate rules are going to allow it. Most early indications have been saying that it's more policy than mandatory savings, which is a judgment call, which I don't think we should be leaving to an unelected Senate parliamentarian, but that's the way it is right now. I'm all for keeping the REINS Act in. I want to vote for the big but not yet beautiful bill, but it's got to freshen up a bit. We're looking for a little bit of makeup here and there, maybe a little haircut here and there. We got to have some improvements, and I can vote for it. We got to get rid of the debt ceiling, move it on to another bill, and I'm an enthusiastic yes at that point.
Listen, we'll have you up here. Fox Hair and Makeup does the best in the business, and that's probably what you need. I don't mean you personally, but that's what it needs. And maybe, actually, come on up here, sit on set with me, and we're going to have a long conversation. Anyway, Senator Rand Paul, we appreciate your open-mindedness, sir.